Yuki Tanaka's fingers dug into the ship's railing as USS Consolation cut through San Francisco fog. September 8, 1945. 24-year-old telegraph operator from Hiroshima, and she was convinced the next hour would be her last. Behind her, 246 other Japanese women prisoners pressed together like cattle awaiting slaughter. Ko Fujimoto, the young nurse from Osaka, stood so close Yuki could feel her trembling. "When they shoot us, stay silent," whispered Tomoko Saito, a nurse with hollow eyes. "Don't give them the satisfaction of hearing us scream." Ko's voice came out strangled. "My mother said Americans cut off women's breasts for trophies." "I heard they eat prisoners alive," another woman said. "Start with the fingers." Yuki wanted to call them idiots, but her own hands were shaking too hard. The propaganda films had been explicit. American demons with fangs and claws. Women violated in front of crowds. Bodies thrown to dogs. She'd watched those films a dozen times before deployment to the Philippines. Every frame had been burned into her brain. The ship's horn blasted. Women shrieked. Some collapsed. An older woman vomited on her own shoes. "This is it," Tomoko breathed. "They're going to line us up on the dock." Through the fog, Angel Island materialized like a ghost. Wooden buildings clustered on rocky slopes, guard towers, barbed wire. Everything Yuki had been taught to expect from American brutality. The gangplank dropped with a metallic clang that sounded like a guillotine blade. Lieutenant Colonel James Murphy stood at the bottom, 38 years old and exhausted. He'd fought across 3 Pacific islands and killed enough men to fill a cemetery. Now he had to convince 247 terrified women that he wasn't going to hurt them. He crushed his cigarette and turned to the young private beside him. "Sullivan, when they come down, you smile. You understand me? You smile like your goddamn life depends on it." Private Danny Sullivan, 19 years old from Philadelphia, stared at him. "But sir, they're the enemy." "Not anymore. Now they're scared women who think we're going to rape them. So you smile, you help them down, and you act like a human being. That's an order." Sullivan swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." The first woman appeared at the top of the gangplank. Yuki forced her legs to move. 1 step, 2. Don't show fear. Die with dignity. The Japanese way. Behind her, someone was crying. Someone else was praying to gods who clearly didn't care anymore. At the bottom, an American soldier stepped forward. Chinese face, American uniform. He spoke in Japanese. "Welcome to the United States. Please watch your step. We have transport waiting." Yuki froze. The voice held no hatred, no mockery, just procedural courtesy, like she was a guest. A guest. The word didn't make sense. She looked past him at Murphy, waiting for the trap to spring, for the guns to appear, for reality to match what she'd been promised. Murphy nodded to her. Just a nod. Almost gentle. Ko stumbled on the last step. Sullivan instinctively reached out, caught her elbow. Ko jerked away like he'd burned her. Their eyes met. Sullivan had kind eyes. Tired eyes. Eyes that looked like they belonged to someone's younger brother, not a demon. "Ma'am, you're okay," Sullivan said, though Ko didn't understand English. But his face said enough. Ko stared at his hand, still extended, palm up. Not threatening. Offering help. Her propaganda training screamed at her to run, but her exhausted body betrayed her. She took his hand. Let him steady her. His grip was gentle. "Thank you," she whispered in Japanese. The words felt like treason. The trucks had benches. Real benches with cushions, not the metal floors Ko remembered from Manila. Women climbed in silently, waiting for something terrible to happen. It didn't. The trucks just drove. Through San Francisco streets where buildings stood intact, where people walked without fear, where children played on sidewalks like war had never touched them. "This isn't real," Yuki said. "It's a fake city. Propaganda." But Ko pressed her face to the canvas gap and saw a woman pushing a baby carriage, laughing at something her husband said. Real laughter. Real life. Impossible. We've been bombing them for 4 years, Ko whispered. Where are the ruins? Nobody answered because nobody had an answer. Angel Island processing station smelled like pine trees and salt water. Not blood. Not death. The barracks were old but clean. Women filed into a large room where American soldiers stood along the walls, not pointing guns, just standing. Watching. A woman in a captain's uniform stepped forward. "My name is Captain Martha Phillips," the translator said. "You will be processed, given medical examinations, cleaned, clothed, and fed. You are prisoners of war and will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. That means you have rights. You will not be harmed." "Lies," hissed Michiko Tanaka, a secretary from Manila. "They're softening us up before the torture." Phillips seemed to hear the murmurs, even without understanding Japanese. "I know you're afraid. I know you've been told terrible things about us. But I give you my word, as an officer, and as a woman, that you are safe here." The word "safe" cut through the room like broken glass. Safe. From enemies. The contradiction made Yuki's head hurt. They were led to a shower facility. Real showers with white tile and chrome fixtures that gleamed. Nurse Helen Crawford, 32 years old from Chicago, stood by the entrance with folded towels. "Hot water," Crawford said through the translator. "Soap, shampoo, take your time." Yuki turned the knob. Water exploded over her skin. She screamed and jumped back, hitting Tomoko behind her. "It's burning me!" Crawford rushed over, turned the temperature down. "I'm sorry, it's just hot. You're safe. Look." She put her own hand under the spray. "See? Just warm water." Yuki stared at her palm, red but not burned. Just warm. When was the last time she'd felt warm water? Manila, maybe. 2 years ago. She stepped back under the stream and her knees buckled. Ko caught her. "This is wrong," Yuki whispered. "Enemies don't do this." But the water kept running. Crawford handed her a bar of ivory soap. White. Perfect. Smelling like nothing Yuki had ever known. In Manila, they'd shared one brown crumbling bar between 20 women. This was hers alone. Ko turned on her shower. Let the water pour over her head. Felt months of grime washing away. Started crying and couldn't stop. Around them, other women cried too. Not from pain. From the terrible realization that everything might have been a lie. 20 minutes later, dressed in clean cotton shirts and skirts that actually fit, they were led to a mess hall. Yuki stopped breathing. The tables were set with real plates, real silverware, and food. Actual food. Roasted chicken, golden and glistening. White bread. Butter in small dishes. Fresh milk in glass bottles. Coffee. Apples. Oranges. Fruit they hadn't seen in years. "It's poisoned." Akiko Yamada announced, an older clerk who'd survived 3 prison camps. "They're killing us slow." But Private Sullivan and 20 other American soldiers were filling their plates from the same serving dishes. Same chicken, same bread. If it was poison, they were dying too. Murphy watched from the doorway as the first woman, a brave one, cut a tiny piece of chicken. Put it in her mouth. Her eyes closed. She started crying into her plate. "They're breaking, sir," said Captain Henderson beside him. "No," Murphy corrected. "They're waking up." Ko picked up her fork. The metal felt strange after months of eating with her hands or broken chopsticks. She cut into the chicken. The meat was tender, seasoned with salt and pepper, cooked with care. Someone had put effort into this meal. For prisoners. For enemies. The taste hit her tongue and she couldn't swallow. Couldn't breathe. This was food prepared with dignity. This was nourishment given without cruelty, without strings, without the expectation of gratitude. It was simply kind. Ko thought about her mother's last letter before capture. The one that said they were eating grass soup. The one that said her little brother's ribs showed through his skin. And here she was eating chicken. Real chicken. She put her fork down, pushed the plate away. "Ko," Yuki whispered. "You have to eat." "My family is starving." "Your family isn't here. You are, and you're alive. Eat." Ko looked at the plate, at the chicken, at the impossible kindness of enemies. She picked up her fork again. This time she swallowed, and hated herself for how good it tasted. That night in Barrack 7, 50 women lay on real mattresses with clean sheets and wool blankets. Nobody spoke for an hour. They were all processing the same impossible day. Finally, Tomoko broke the silence. "My brother is probably dead in Manchuria. My mother is eating bark in Kyoto, and I just had chicken and slept in a bed." "We're prisoners," Ko said to the ceiling. "We're not supposed to be comfortable." "Then why are we?" Yuki asked. "Why are they doing this?" Michiko, the bitter secretary, laughed without humor. "Because they already won. They can afford mercy when victory is total. This is what power looks like when you're so dominant, you don't need to crush defeated enemies." But an older woman named Reiko Matsuda, the youngest prisoner at 19, spoke quietly from her bunk. "Or maybe they're just not demons. Maybe we were lied to." The words hung in the darkness like smoke. Nobody responded, because responding meant admitting something too dangerous to voice. If the Americans weren't demons, then who were the real monsters? Murphy wrote his report in his office while listening to night sounds from the barracks. Crying. Whispered arguments. The sounds of cognitive dissonance tearing through 247 souls. "They expected torture," he wrote to the War Department. "We gave them warm showers and chicken dinner." The psychological impact cannot be overstated. These women were taught we were subhuman. We are destroying that belief simply by being decent. This is how you win the peace. He put down his pen and lit another cigarette. Outside, fog rolled in from the Pacific. Inside the barracks, women who had survived bombs were being destroyed by kindness. And kindness, Murphy knew, was the most powerful weapon America possessed. The next morning started at 700 hours. Roll call conducted by Sergeant Phillips, who called names without contempt, just efficiency. Breakfast was oatmeal with brown sugar eggs, toast, fruit coffee. Real portions that suggested they mattered. Work assignments were posted. Ko and 15 other nurses were assigned to the medical barracks. Yuki and the translators were asked to help process captured documents, not forced, asked, and they would be paid in camp money. Dr. Sarah Weinstein waited in the medical barracks when Ko arrived. 36 years old, Jewish from New York. She'd volunteered for this assignment specifically because she knew what it meant to be called subhuman. "Your nurses?" Weinstein asked through the translator. Ko and the others nodded stiffly. "Good. We need help. Lots of sick prisoners from other facilities arriving this week. You'll work alongside our staff. Same duties, same respect. You know how to take blood pressure." Ko nodded again. This was a test. Had to be. Weinstein handed her a stethoscope. "Show me." Ko took the instrument, held it like the weapon it could become, approached a prisoner sitting for examination, placed the diaphragm over the brachial artery, pumped the cuff, read the gauge. 130/85. Weinstein checked herself, nodded. "Exactly right. You're good. Where'd you train?" "Osaka University Hospital. 3 years. "I trained at Mount Sinai. 4 years. Different countries, same oath." Weinstein met her eyes. "The oath doesn't stop at borders. You understand, nurse is nurse." Ko felt something crack inside her chest. This American doctor was treating her like a colleague, like an equal, like someone whose professional training mattered more than her nationality. Helen Crawford appeared with a supply cart. "Ko, right. Help me organize these bandages by size. We're getting sloppy." Ko followed her to the supply room. Crawford showed her the system-explained inventory procedures, treated her like any new hire. Not a prisoner, not an enemy, just another nurse learning the ropes. "You have good hands," Crawford said, watching Ko work. "Steady. That's important in this job." Ko's English was broken, but improving. You too, I see yesterday, when you help old woman, gentle. Crawford smiled. That's Mrs. Yamada. Tough as nails, but her hip is bad. She reminds me of my grandmother. She paused. You have family back home. Ko's hands stopped moving. Mother, brother, father missing. Probably dead. I'm sorry. And Crawford's voice carried real sympathy. Not pity, sympathy. War is hell on families. My brother died at Guadalcanal. Ko looked up sharply. Your brother killed by Japanese? Yes. And you helped me. Why? Crawford's expression was steady. Because you didn't kill him. War did. And someone has to stop the cycle of hatred, or it never ends. Might as well be us nurses, right? We've seen enough death. Ko's eyes filled. She turned away quickly, pretending to organize gauze pads, but her hands were shaking. This woman's brother had died fighting Japan. And she was standing here treating Ko with kindness. The contradiction was unbearable. That afternoon, mail arrived from Japan. Letters forwarded through the Red Cross. Women crowded around as names were called. Some got nothing. Some got thin envelopes that felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Ko's letter from her mother was 2 pages of shaky handwriting. The paper was thin, probably salvaged from something else. The words were worse. My dear Ko, Tokyo is gone. Everything is rubble. We are living in what used to be a school. 3 families per classroom. Your brother has tuberculosis. No medicine, no doctors left. We eat grass soup most days, sometimes rice if someone has money. Your father's body was never found. We assume Okinawa. I'm glad you're alive. Even as a prisoner, at least you're eating. At least one of us survived. Please don't feel guilty for living. Your mother. Ko read it 3 times. The last line destroyed her. Don't feel guilty. But how could she not? She'd eaten chicken last night. Real chicken with seasoning and care. Her brother was dying of tuberculosis and she'd complained the coffee was too hot. Yuki found her sitting outside, staring at the letter. Yuki's own letter was crumpled in her fist. My sister says maybe the Americans are kinder than our own generals were, Yuki said without preamble. She says at least you're getting medical care. That's more than Tokyo can offer. Ko looked at her. Do you understand what's happening to us? We're being treated well. No, we're being broken. Not with torture, with kindness. They're showing us that everything we believed was a lie, and that's worse than any beating. Yuki sat down beside her. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed red in the afternoon sun across the water. A monument to American engineering, American confidence, American power that didn't need to announce itself through cruelty. Ko, what are we supposed to do? Refuse the food? Demand they treat us badly so we can keep hating them? I don't know how to process this. Neither do I. Ko folded the letter carefully. My mother said, don't feel guilty for living. But I'm starting to like it here. I look forward to working in the medical barracks. Helen brought me chocolate yesterday. Real chocolate. And it was delicious. And I didn't feel shame until hours later. So what does that make us? Traitors. Or maybe it makes us the first ones to wake up. Inside Barrack 7 that night, arguments erupted. Women fractured into factions. Some clung desperately to propaganda, insisting this was all psychological warfare. Others were cautiously accepting that maybe they'd been lied to. And a third group was getting angry, furiously angry. Our government sent us to die based on lies, shouted Tomoko. They told us Americans were monsters, but these monsters feed us better than our own army ever did. Keep your voice down, Michiko hissed. They're listening. Let them listen. I don't care anymore. My family is starving while I eat 3 meals a day. The enemy is keeping me alive while my own people die. Explain that to me. Explain how that's patriotic. An older woman slapped her. You dishonor the emperor. Tomoko laughed bitterly. The emperor told us to surrender. The war is over. We lost. So who am I dishonoring dead generals, politicians who sent us to die? or a system that lied to us from the beginning? Ko pulled her blanket over her head, trying to block it out. But the voices penetrated everything, because they were all asking the same question. If the Americans weren't the demons they'd been taught to fear, then who was? Murphy received reports daily. Prisoner adjustment tracked through multiple metrics. Physical health improving rapidly. Psychological state fragmenting. Some women requesting to speak with him privately, asking questions that revealed the depth of their crisis. Reiko Matsuda came to his office on the 5th day. 19 years old, had been a typist in Singapore. She'd cried every night since arrival. "Colonel Murphy," the translator said, "she wants to ask you something." "Go ahead." Through translation, the question came. "Why are you being kind to us? We lost. You won. In Japan, we would make you suffer. Why don't you—" Murphy had been expecting this. He leaned back in his chair and chose his words carefully. "Miss Matsuda, America fights hard. We fight to win. But when the shooting stops, we remember something important. We remember that our enemies are people. Human beings with families, with hopes, with the same basic needs we have. We remember that today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend. And we remember that the whole world is watching to see what kind of nation will be in victory." The translation happened. Reiko absorbed it, then shook her head slowly. "But we were told you were devils, that you would torture us, violate us, kill us. Everything we were taught was wrong." Murphy's expression softened. "War requires both sides to dehumanize the enemy. Your leaders told you we were devils because if you saw us as human, you couldn't fight us effectively. But Miss Matsuda, here's the question you need to ask yourself. Why did your leaders have to lie to you about who we are? What does that tell you about which side was actually the devil?" The words hit like artillery. Reiko left his office in tears, not from cruelty, from the violent collision between what she'd been taught and what she was experiencing, from the realization that everything she'd believed was built on propaganda. By the end of the first week, the transformation was undeniable. Women who'd arrived gaunt were gaining weight. Hair that had been brittle was shining again. Eyes that had been dull were showing something more complex. Not happiness, not yet. But the first tentative recognition that maybe, just maybe, survival didn't require hating their captors. Ko worked in the medical barracks every day. Helen taught her English medical terms, showed her new bandaging techniques, included her in staff meetings, treated her like part of the team. And with each small kindness, another piece of Ko's ideological foundation crumbled. One afternoon, Ko was reorganizing supply cabinets when Helen came in with coffee. "Take a break," Helen said. "You've been at it for 3 hours." Ko accepted the cup. The coffee was hot, real, and tasted like something she didn't deserve. "Helen, can I ask question?" "Of course." "Your brother died fighting Japan. You say Guadalcanal, but you help me. You teach me. You kind to me. How you do this?" Helen set down her own cup, met Ko's eyes directly. "Because hating you won't bring him back. Because you're not the war, you're just someone caught in it. And because if I let this war turn me into someone who treats other human beings as less than human, then the war won. Even though we won the battles, the war itself won. I refuse to let that happen." Ko's vision blurred. "In Japan, we would never forgive, never forget." "I know," Helen said quietly. "And that's why Japan lost. Not because of bombs or battles, because a nation that can't forgive can't move forward. It just stays trapped in the past, fighting the same wars forever." That night, Ko couldn't sleep. She lay in her warm bed under her clean blanket, surrounded by enemies who treated her better than her own commanders ever had. Around her, other women wrestled with the same demons. The creak of bunks, muffled crying, whispered prayers to gods who seemed to have switched sides. Yuki leaned over from the bunk above. "Ko, you awake?" "Yes." "I've been thinking about what you said. about being broken by kindness. And, I think you're right, but I also think maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we needed to be broken. Maybe what we believed was poison, and this is the antidote. Ko stared at the ceiling. Outside, fog rolled in from the Pacific, wrapping Angel Island in cool silence. Inside, 247 women lay in warm beds with full stomachs and shattered certainties. They had survived the war. But surviving peace, surviving kindness from enemies was proving far more difficult than any of them had imagined. Because kindness required them to question everything. And once you start questioning, there's no comfortable place to stop. The third week brought something unexpected. Work. Real work, with purpose. Ko found herself in the medical barracks at 6:30 every morning. Not because anyone forced her, but because Helen had asked if she wanted to help with the incoming patients. Wanted, not ordered. The distinction mattered. "We've got 12 new arrivals from the Philippines camp," Helen said, checking her clipboard. "Malnutrition, dysentery, 2 with tuberculosis. You know the drill." Ko nodded. She knew the drill. She'd treated the same conditions in Manila before capture. But there was something different about treating them here, with adequate supplies, real medicine, and colleagues who respected her skills. The first patient was a woman in her 50s, skeletal and barely conscious. Ko checked her pulse. Weak, erratic. She looked at Helen. "Severe dehydration, maybe sepsis. We need IV fluids, antibiotics." Helen was already moving. "Weinstein, we need sulfa drugs and lactated Ringer's stat." Dr. Weinstein appeared with supplies. Together, the 3 women worked. Ko found the vein on the first try, despite the woman's collapsed circulation. Helen monitored vitals. Weinstein calculated dosages. No hierarchy. No enemy lines. Just 3 medical professionals trying to save a life. 2 hours later, the woman's pulse strengthened. Her color improved. She opened her eyes. "You're going to be okay," Ko said in Japanese. "You're safe now." The woman's lips moved. Am I in heaven?" Ko's throat tightened. "No. You're in California. You're a prisoner. But you're alive." Helen touched Ko's shoulder. "Good work. You've got steady hands under pressure." Ko looked at those hands. Hands that had just saved a Japanese woman's life, using American medicine. American supplies taught by American nurses. The cognitive dissonance was crushing. At lunch, Yuki was already at their usual table. She'd been translating captured documents all morning, working with a young lieutenant named James Porter, who treated her like a valued colleague rather than a defeated enemy. "Porter gave me chocolate again," Yuki said, unwrapping a Hershey's bar. "He said his mother sends him too much." Ko, his mother, is sending chocolate to her son, who gives it to Japanese prisoners. What kind of war is this? Ko took the piece Yuki offered, let it melt on her tongue. The kind where nobody knows how to hate anymore. Tomoko joined them, slamming her tray down. "I hate them." "No, you don't," Yuki said. "Yes, I do. I have to. Because if I stop hating them, then what was it all for? What did my brother die for? What did any of it mean?" Ko understood. Tomoko's brother had died at Iwo Jima. She'd received the notification 2 weeks ago. Official military telegram forwarded through the Red Cross. Killed in action. Died for the Emperor. Died fighting Americans. And now his sister was eating American food, sleeping in American beds, being treated with American kindness. "Maybe it didn't mean anything," Ko said quietly. "Maybe that's the point." Tomoko's eyes filled. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that." "Why not? We were taught the Americans were devils. They're not. We were taught dying for the Emperor was glorious. Your brother's dead and it changes nothing. We were taught that surrender was worse than death. But I'm alive, and you're alive, and Yuki's alive, and I'm starting to think maybe living matters more than dying for a lie." Tomoko stood abruptly. "You're a traitor." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of the lies." The confrontation drew attention from nearby tables. Other prisoners watched. Some nodded. Others looked away, uncomfortable with truth spoken too loudly. That afternoon, Murphy called Ko to his office. She went expecting punishment. Instead, she found him with a request. "Miss Fujimoto, doctor. Weinstein tells me you're an excellent nurse. We're getting more prisoners from Guam next week, mostly sick. I'd like you to help train some of them in basic medical care. Would you be willing?" Ko stared at him. "You want me to teach?" "Yes, you've got the skills. You've got the experience. And frankly, they'll trust another Japanese woman more than they'll trust us, at least initially." "You're asking, not ordering." Murphy smiled slightly. "I'm asking. You can say no." Ko thought about it. Teaching meant responsibility. Teaching meant being part of the system. Teaching meant crossing a line from prisoner to participant. And yet, "I'll do it." "Thank you. You'll be paid, of course. Same rate as the other instructors." Ko walked out of his office in a daze. Paid, instructor. Trusted with responsibility. The Americans were systematically destroying every belief she'd ever held about them, and they were doing it with bureaucratic efficiency. October brought rain. Cold Pacific rain that turned the island into mud and fog. The barracks stayed warm, though. Americans had installed heaters. Real heaters that worked. Ko lay in her bunk at night, listening to rain on the roof, and thought about her family in Tokyo. Probably cold, probably wet, probably hungry. Yuki climbed down from the upper bunk. "Can't sleep. Thinking about my brother. The one with tuberculosis." "Yes. Helen told me they have a new drug, streptomycin. It cures tuberculosis. The Americans developed it last year, but Japan doesn't have it. My brother is dying of a disease that can be cured, and he's dying because he's on the wrong side of the war." Yuki sat beside her. "You could ask." "Ask what?" "Murphy, Weinstein, someone. Ask if they can send medicine to Japan. Through the Red Cross, maybe." Ko laughed bitterly. "Why would they help? We're enemies." "Are we? I don't know anymore." The next morning, Ko found herself in Weinstein's office. The doctor was reviewing patient charts, drinking coffee that smelled like it came from heaven. "Dr. Weinstein, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Sit." Ko sat, twisted her hands together. "My brother, in Tokyo. He has tuberculosis. I know about streptomycin. I know it works. Is there any way? Could medicine be sent through the Red Cross?" Weinstein set down her coffee, looked at Ko for a long moment. "I can try. No promises. But I can submit a request through military medical channels. Name and location." Ko's voice broke. "Takeshi Fujimoto. Tokyo. Shibuya District. Living in what used to be Meiji Elementary School." Weinstein wrote it down. "I'll see what I can do." Ko couldn't speak, could only nod. An American doctor was trying to save her Japanese brother's life. The world had gone insane. That evening during mail call, Reiko received a letter from her mother. She read it once, twice, then started screaming. "Liar! You're all liars!" Ko and Yuki rushed over. Reiko was on her knees, the letter crumpled in her fist, tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Ko asked. Reiko shoved the letter at her. Ko read. Her stomach turned. The letter was from Reiko's mother. It described conditions in Osaka, American occupation forces distributing food, setting up medical clinics, rebuilding infrastructure. The Americans in Japan were doing the same things the Americans on Angel Island were doing, being kind, being efficient, being human. "She says the Americans gave her rice." Reiko sobbed. "Rice and milk powder. She says they're treating people better than our own government did during the war. She says maybe we should have surrendered sooner." The words hung in the air like grenades. Michiko, the bitter secretary, snatched the letter, read it. Her face went pale. "This is propaganda. American propaganda sent to demoralize us." But Yuki had received a similar letter. So had Tomoko. So had a dozen others. Letters from families in occupied Japan, all saying the same thing. The Americans were being kind, not perfect, not saints, but fundamentally decent human beings who seemed genuinely committed to helping Japan rebuild. That night, Barrack 7 exploded into argument. Women shouting, some defending the emperor, some questioning everything, some just crying overwhelmed by the collapse of certainty. "We were told they would rape us," shouted one woman. "Nobody's been touched," Ko said quietly. "We were told they would torture us. We're sleeping on mattresses with full stomachs. We were told they were devils. They're just people, tired people who want to go home just like us." Tomoko threw her pillow across the room. "Then what did my brother die for? What was the point of any of it?" Ko stood up, faced them all. "There was no point. That's the truth. Your brother died for nothing. My father died for nothing. Millions died for nothing because our leaders lied to us. They told us Americans were monsters, so we would fight without question. But they were the real monsters. They sent us to die while they lived in comfort. And now the monsters lost, and the so-called devils are feeding us and healing us and treating us like human beings." The silence was deafening. Then Michiko slapped her. Hard. The crack echoed. "Traitor." Ko touched her burning cheek. "Maybe. But I'm a traitor who's alive. And I'm starting to think that matters more than loyalty to lies." Murphy got the report the next morning. Fight in Barrack 7. One prisoner struck another. He called both women to his office. Ko came with a bruised cheek. Michiko came with defiant eyes. "What happened?" Murphy asked through the translator. Michiko spoke first. "She speaks treason against the emperor. She says our leaders were monsters. She dishonors the dead." Murphy looked at Ko. "Is that what you said?" Ko met his eyes. "Yes, sir." "Do you believe it?" "Yes, sir, I do." Murphy dismissed Michiko, asked Ko to stay. When they were alone, he leaned back in his chair. "You're making enemies among your own people." "I know. That's dangerous. Prisons are difficult enough without internal conflict." "Colonel Murphy, may I speak freely?" "Always." Ko took a breath. "You're destroying us, not with cruelty, with kindness. Every meal we eat, every warm bed we sleep in, every time one of your soldiers smiles at us, you're destroying everything we believed. And some of us can't handle that. Some of us need to believe you're evil because if you're not evil, then everything we suffered was for nothing. Do you understand? You're not just winning the war, you're winning our souls. And it's terrifying." Murphy was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully. "Miss Fujimoto, I'm not trying to win your soul. I'm trying to treat you like a human being because that's what my country believes in. We believe that even enemies deserve dignity, even defeated enemies. Especially defeated enemies. Because how we treat you now will determine what kind of relationship our countries have for the next 100 years. This isn't about winning. This is about building peace." Ko's eyes filled. "It would be easier if you were cruel." "I know, but we're not. And eventually you'll have to decide what to do with that truth." November brought Thanksgiving. Murphy announced a special meal for the prisoners. Turkey with all the trimmings. The women didn't understand the holiday, but they understood the gesture. Helen explained it to Ko while they prepared the medical barracks for a holiday party. Thanksgiving is about gratitude, about recognizing the good things in life even when times are hard. "What do you have to be grateful for?" Ko asked. "Your brother is dead. You're stuck here with enemy prisoners instead of home with your family." Helen stopped hanging decorations, turned to face Ko. "I'm grateful I met you. I'm grateful I've gotten to see that the enemy has a face, has skills, has dignity. I'm grateful this war is over, and maybe just maybe we can build something better than what came before. Is that naive? Probably. But you're still here helping me hang decorations." Ko looked at the paper turkey in her hands. Ridiculous American symbol. And yet, she was helping, participating, becoming part of the community she was supposed to hate. The Thanksgiving meal was elaborate. Turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. Sullivan and the other young soldiers served it themselves, carrying heavy trays, smiling despite exhaustion. Yuki stared at her plate. "This is too much." "Eat it anyway," Ko said. "Your family would want you to survive." "How do you know?" "Because that's what my mother wrote. She said don't feel guilty for living, so eat the damn turkey." Yuki cut a piece, chewed slowly, started crying into her plate. Again. They all cried into their meals now. Crying had become normal, expected. Nobody commented anymore. Porter, the young lieutenant, approached Yuki's table. "Everything okay?" Yuki wiped her eyes. "Yes, thank you. Food is good." "You're welcome. Happy Thanksgiving." After he left, Tomoko hissed, "Stop being so friendly with them." "Why?" Yuki challenged. "Give me one good reason." "Because they're the enemy. The war is over. They won. We lost. They're not the enemy anymore. They're just the winners. And the winners are feeding us turkey." Tomoko had no response to that. None of them did. The logic was inescapable. That evening, Weinstein pulled Ko aside. "I heard back about your brother." Ko's heart stopped. "And?" "The Red Cross approved the request. We're shipping streptomycin to the Shibuya District Medical Center. It should arrive within a month. No guarantees it'll reach your specific brother, but it's going to the right area." Ko's legs gave out. She sat down hard on a bench. "You're sending medicine to Japan to help my brother." "We're sending medicine to help sick people. Your brother is a sick person. That's all that matters." Ko buried her face in her hands. Sobbed. Weinstein sat beside her, said nothing. Just put a hand on her shoulder. A simple gesture. Human connection across enemy lines. And it destroyed Ko more thoroughly than any weapon ever could. December arrived with news that Christmas preparations were underway. The prisoners didn't celebrate Christmas, didn't understand it, but Murphy wanted them included anyway. A tree was brought to the mess hall. Decorations appeared. Lights twinkled. "It's a religious holiday," Murphy explained through the translator. "But it's also about peace, goodwill, family. We'd like to share it with you." Some prisoners refused to participate. Michiko and her faction stayed in the barracks, calling it cultural contamination. But most came. Curious, hesitant, unable to resist the lure of community. Sullivan taught Yuki how to string popcorn for decoration. His fingers were clumsy. Hers were skilled. They worked together in companionable silence until Yuki finally spoke. "Sullivan, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you nice to me?" "I'm Japanese. We killed your friends." Sullivan's hands stopped moving. "You didn't kill anyone. You were a telegraph operator. You sent messages. And yeah, Japanese soldiers killed my friends. But you're not those soldiers. You're just a kid who got caught up in something bigger than yourself. Same as me." "I'm not a kid. I'm 24. "I'm 19. To me, you're practically ancient." He smiled. It was genuine, kind. Yuki smiled back before she could stop herself, then felt guilty for smiling, then felt angry about feeling guilty. The cycle never ended. Christmas Eve brought presents, small things wrapped in brown paper. Each prisoner received one. Ko opened hers. A comb, a small mirror, a bar of soap, a chocolate bar wrapped in red foil. Nothing extravagant, just useful items chosen with care. Helen had added a note. "Merry Christmas, Ko. You're an excellent nurse and a good friend. Thank you for all your hard work. Helen." Friend. The word hit Ko like a bullet. When had they become friends? When had enemy become colleague became friend? And what did that make her? That night, the Americans sang Christmas carols. The prisoners didn't know the words, but they listened. The melodies were strange but beautiful, peaceful, hopeful. Everything war wasn't. Murphy stood before them all. I know most of you don't celebrate this holiday, but I wanted to give you something anyway. Not because you're prisoners, because you're human beings far from home during difficult times, and because my country believes that peace starts with small gestures of kindness. Merry Christmas. And may we all go home soon to the families who miss us. The translation happened. Women wept, and not from sadness, from the slow, painful death of hatred, from the realization that the enemy was teaching them something their own country never had. That even in defeat, you could be treated with dignity. That mercy wasn't weakness. That kindness wasn't a trap. Ko clutched her presents, thought about her brother in Tokyo, hopefully receiving American medicine. Thought about Helen, who treated her like a colleague despite her brother's death. Thought about Murphy, who could have made their lives hell, but chose mercy instead. And she understood something profound. This was the real defeat. Not the bombs, not the surrender. This, being conquered by compassion. In the barracks that night, Yuki whispered into the darkness. Ko, are you awake? Yes. I don't want to leave anymore. When they send us home, I don't want to go. Ko understood perfectly. Neither do I. Does that make us traitors? Probably. Or maybe it makes us the first ones to understand what peace actually means. Around them, other women lay awake with the same thoughts. 247 prisoners, learning the hardest lesson of all. That sometimes the enemy isn't who you were taught to hate. Sometimes the enemy is the lie itself. And sometimes in the midst of hunger and darkness, there are hearts that whisper hope, even when hope feels like betrayal. January 1946 brought ice. Real ice that frosted the windows and turned Angel Island into a winter postcard. Inside Barrack 7, the heaters worked overtime, while outside Ko watched American soldiers distribute extra blankets without being asked. The contrast was becoming unbearable. Package from the Red Cross, Helen said, finding Ko in the medical supply room. Addressed to you. Ko's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter from the Shibuya District Medical Center. Official stamp. Professional letterhead. Her eyes scanned the Japanese characters. Patient Takeshi Fujimoto received streptomycin treatment December 18, 1945. Response positive. Fever decreased. Coughing reduced. Continued treatment recommended. Patient condition upgraded from critical to stable. American medical personnel send regards. Ko read it 3 times. Her brother was alive, improving, because of American medicine, because an American doctor had helped, because the enemy had chosen mercy over revenge. She looked up at Helen. My brother, he's getting better. Helen's face lit up. That's wonderful. See, modern medicine works miracles. American medicine, American doctors, American kindness. Ko's voice cracked. You saved my brother. Why would you save enemy lives? Helen sat down beside her. Because that's what doctors do. We save lives. We don't ask whose side they're on. And Ko, the war is over. There are no sides anymore. Just people who need help. Ko buried her face in her hands. I can't go back. What? When they send us home, I can't go back to Japan. I can't face my family. I can't face my brother. How do I explain that I was eating 3 meals a day while he was dying? How do I explain that the enemy saved his life because I asked them to? How do I explain that I've become friends with Americans? Helen's voice was gentle. You explain that you survived. That's all that matters. But Ko knew it wasn't that simple. Nothing was simple anymore. That afternoon, Murphy called a general assembly. All prisoners to the mess hall. Ko filed in with the others, noting the tension in the air. Something was different. Something was coming. Murphy stood at the front with Captain Henderson and the translator. His expression was serious. Ladies, I have news from Japan. The occupation is proceeding. General MacArthur's forces are distributing food rebuilding infrastructure and establishing democratic reforms. Your families are being cared for. But I also have difficult news. Some of you have been requesting to return home immediately. That won't be possible yet. The situation in Japan is still unstable. We need to ensure your safety before repatriation. The translation finished. Silence, then chaos. You're keeping us prisoner, Michiko shouted. The war is over, and you're still keeping us. For your protection, Murphy said calmly. Japan has no infrastructure right now. No food distribution. Limited medical care. You're safer here. Safe? Michiko's laugh was bitter. Or are you keeping us as trophies? Proof of your victory. Ko stood up. Sit down, Michiko. No, I won't be silent anymore. This is wrong. They're breaking us with fake kindness. Making us forget who we are. Making us love our captors. It's psychological torture. It's called Stockholm Syndrome, Tomoko said quietly. She'd been reading American medical texts, learning, growing. When prisoners develop positive feelings toward captors. Exactly. Michiko seized on it. We're being manipulated, all of this. The food, the medicine, the kindness. It's all designed to make us complicit in our own defeat. Ko stepped forward. Or maybe it's just kindness. Maybe there's no trick. Maybe Americans actually believe in treating people with dignity. Michiko's eyes flashed. You're a traitor. You've completely forgotten Bushido, forgotten honor, forgotten the emperor. The emperor surrendered. The war is over. Honor doesn't feed starving children. Dignity doesn't cure tuberculosis. The Americans are doing more for my family than my own government ever did. So yes, maybe I have forgotten. Maybe forgetting is the only sane response to insanity. The slap came fast. Michiko's palm connected with Ko's jaw. Ko didn't flinch, didn't fight back. Just stood there, cheek-burning eyes steady. Hit me again. It won't change the truth. Murphy's voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Miss Yamada, violence against another prisoner is prohibited. You'll spend 3 days in isolation. Michiko spun on him. Good, I'd rather be alone than surrounded by traitors. She was led away by 2 MPs. The room stayed silent. Ko touched her cheek. Helen appeared with an ice pack. You okay? Yes. But she's not. None of them are. The ones who still believe. Yuki joined them. There are maybe 30 who still think like Michiko. The rest of us. She trailed off. The rest of us are lost, Ko finished. We don't know what we believe anymore. That night, 3 women in Barrack 12 attempted suicide. Pills hoarded from the medical barracks. Tomoko found them and screamed for help. Ko and Helen ran. Weinstein was already there, pumping stomachs, administering charcoal, fighting death with efficiency born of practice. All 3 survived. But barely. Ko stayed with them through the night. Listened to their delirious confessions. One woman, Hanako Sato, 41 years old from Nagasaki, wept into her pillow. I can't go home. I can't face them. They're starving, and I'm fat. They're cold, and I'm warm. They're dying, and I'm alive. What kind of Japanese woman survives while her country burns? Ko held her hand. A human one. You're a human being before you're Japanese, and human beings deserve to survive. But at what cost my soul? My identity? I don't recognize myself anymore. I look in the mirror and see an American prisoner who eats American food and speaks English words and smiles at American soldiers. I've become the enemy. Or maybe you've become yourself. Maybe the enemy was the lie we were taught to believe. Hanako's eyes closed. If that's true, then everything I lived for was a lie. Every sacrifice, every prayer, every moment of devotion, all lies. Ko had no answer, because it was true. By morning, Weinstein had them stabilized. Murphy arrived at dawn, face drawn. How are they alive? Barely. This is the fourth incident this month. Weinstein looked exhausted. Colonel, these women are experiencing profound identity crisis. Everything they believed has been destroyed. Some can adapt, some can't. The ones who can't are becoming suicidal. What do you recommend? Counseling, support groups, something to help them process this. And honestly, send them home. The longer they stay, the worse it gets. They need to see with their own eyes that Japan is rebuilding, that their families are okay, that life continues after defeat. Murphy nodded slowly. I'll send the request up the chain, but it'll take time. These women don't have time. Every day here is another day of cognitive dissonance. It's literally killing them. Ko listened from the next room. Weinstein was right. They were dying. Not from disease, from the weight of truth colliding with belief, from the impossible burden of surviving, while the enemy proved they were human. February brought Valentine's Day. The Americans tried to include the prisoners, little cards, chocolate hearts, innocent gestures that felt obscene. Yuki accepted a card from Lieutenant Porter. It had a cartoon puppy on it, said, "Be mine," in English. Porter explained through gestures that it was just friendly. Nothing romantic, just American custom. Yuki showed it to Ko. What do I do with this? I don't know. Keep it, throw it away. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. If I keep it, I'm accepting American culture. If I throw it away, I'm rejecting kindness. There's no right answer anymore. Ko understood perfectly. Every interaction had become a moral minefield. Accept kindness and betray your culture. Reject kindness and hurt people who'd done nothing wrong. There was no path that didn't lead to guilt. That evening, a new transport arrived from Okinawa. 50 more women. These were different. Harder. Angrier. They'd been captured after brutal fighting, had seen atrocities on both sides, expected torture. Ko helped process them in the medical barracks. The first woman, Sakura Kimura, 28, a teacher from Naha, looked around the clean facility with suspicion. Where are the cells? The interrogation rooms? There aren't any. This is a medical facility. We treat sick prisoners. You're Japanese. Why are you helping them? Ko met her eyes. Because they're not who we were told they were. Sakura's laugh was harsh. You've been brainwashed. I watched Americans burn Okinawa. I saw what they did. Don't tell me they're kind. I've been here 4 months. I've seen only kindness. Then you're blind. Ko wanted to argue. But Sakura's eyes held too much pain, too much trauma. She'd seen the worst of war. Ko had seen the best of peace. How could they reconcile? Over the next week, the Okinawa prisoners disrupted everything. They refused food, refused medicine, refused to work. Sat in sullen defiance waiting for the torture that never came. Murphy didn't force them, just kept offering, kept being patient, kept being kind. Sakura watched this for 3 days before approaching Ko in the mess hall. Why don't they hurt us? Because that's not who they are. But we're enemies. The war is over. We're just prisoners now, and prisoners have rights. Sakura sat down slowly, stared at the food, real food. In Okinawa, we ate grass, bark. Some people ate worse things. And here you have chicken and bread. I know. It's hard to accept. My students are dead. All of them. American bombs, American bullets, children. And now those same Americans want to feed me. Ko had no comfort to offer. I can't explain it. I can only tell you what I've experienced. They're not monsters. They're just people. Tired people who want this war to be over. Same as us. Sakura picked up her fork, held it like a weapon, then slowly cut a piece of chicken, put it in her mouth, chewed, swallowed, started crying. This is wrong. It's all wrong. It should hurt more. Defeat should feel worse. Why does the enemy's mercy hurt more than their weapons? Because mercy requires us to see them as human. And if they're human, then everything we did becomes questionable. Every belief, every sacrifice, every death, it all becomes ambiguous. By March, the Okinawa prisoners had mostly integrated. Mostly. A few still resisted. Sakura became one of Ko's students learning advanced nursing. She was brilliant, driven by the need to save lives after watching so many die. One afternoon, while organizing supplies, Sakura spoke without looking up. "My sister died at Okinawa. 16 years old, killed by an American shell, direct hit, nothing left to bury." Ko stopped working. "I'm sorry. The soldier who killed her is probably here, or somewhere in America, eating dinner with his family, laughing, living, while my sister is ash. Probably. And I'm supposed to forgive him. No. You're supposed to survive him, that's all. Just survive and build something better." Sakura's hands shook. Helen's brother died at Guadalcanal, killed by Japanese. She told me yesterday, said it doesn't matter now, said the war is over and we have to move forward. How can she forgive so easily? It's not forgiveness, it's exhaustion. Everyone is too tired to hate anymore. But I'm not tired. I'm furious. And I don't know what to do with that fury, because the enemy keeps being kind, and it makes everything worse. Ko understood. The fury had to go somewhere. Without an enemy to hate, it turned inward. Became self-destruction. Became suicide attempts and midnight screams, and women who stared at walls for hours. April brought cherry blossoms. Someone had planted cherry trees on Angel Island years ago. They bloomed pink and white, utterly beautiful, utterly wrong. Hanami without joy. Spring without hope. The prisoners sat under the trees in silence. Yuki held a blossom in her palm. In Japan, cherry blossoms mean beauty and impermanence. Life is brief, beauty fades, death is inevitable. Here they just mean spring, Ko said. But we're not supposed to be here in spring. We're supposed to be home. Or dead. Not sitting under cherry trees as prisoners eating American food. Porter approached with his camera. "Can I take a picture? You all look beautiful under the blossoms." The translator rendered it. Women looked at each other. A photograph. Evidence of their captivity. Evidence of their comfort. Evidence of their betrayal. "Yes," Yuki said. "Take the picture." They posed. 50 women under cherry blossoms. Not smiling. Not frowning. Just existing in the space between cultures, between identities, between who they were and who they were becoming. Porter clicked the shutter. "Thank you. I'll send copies to you all." After he left, Sakura said quietly, "That photograph is evidence. Evidence that we accepted this. When we go home, people will see it and judge us." "Let them judge," Ko said. "We survived. That's all that matters." But she knew it wasn't true. Survival wasn't enough. They had to survive with their souls intact. And every day here made that harder. May brought the news they'd been waiting for. Repatriation scheduled for June. They would finally go home. The announcement should have brought joy. Instead, it brought panic. "I can't go back," Yuki said. "I don't know how to be Japanese anymore." "Neither do I," admitted Tomoko. "We speak English now. We eat American food without chopsticks. We work alongside Americans like equals. How do we go back to being subservient, to being proper Japanese women?" Ko had been thinking about this for weeks. We don't. We go back changed, and we change Japan. They'll hate us. Probably. But maybe that's the price of surviving. We carry the knowledge that the enemy wasn't who we thought. And we carry it home. And maybe slowly that knowledge changes things. Sakura joined them. "I've decided something. When I get home, I'm going to teach. Teach nursing the way Weinstein taught me, with dignity, with respect, without the hierarchy that killed so many. If Americans can treat enemies like humans, Japanese can treat each other better." The women fell silent, each processing what return meant. They'd survived the war, survived captivity, survived kindness. Now they had to survive going home. And somehow, that felt like the hardest battle yet. In the medical barracks, Helen gave Ko a final gift. A nursing textbook. American. With Helen's notes in the margins. Take it home. Teach others what you learned here. Ko held the book like sacred text. They'll call me a collaborator. Let them. You'll know the truth. That's enough. Is it? Helen hugged her. Really hugged her. Two nurses. Two humans. Two friends who'd found each other across enemy lines. It has to be, Helen whispered. Otherwise, none of this means anything. That night, Ko sat under the cherry trees and thought about going home, about facing her brother who'd been saved by American medicine, about explaining to her mother why she looked healthy and well-fed, about returning to a country that had lied to her, that had sent her to die, that had called enemies demons, when the demons had turned out to be the truest humans she'd ever met. Around her, other women wrestled with the same thoughts. 247 souls caught between worlds, between identities, between truth and lies. They'd come here expecting death and found life, expected cruelty and found kindness, expected monsters and found men who smiled. And now, they had to carry that impossible truth home and somehow make it mean something. In a camp built to house enemies, they'd learned that the greatest prison wasn't barbed wire. It was belief. And the hardest bars to break were the ones inside their own minds. The final month felt like waiting for execution. June 15, 1946 was the departure date. Yuki marked each day on the wall beside her bunk with chalk. 27 marks. 27 days until they returned to a country that no longer existed in the form they remembered. What if they don't recognize us? Yuki asked Ko during breakfast. The oatmeal had become routine. Normal. That was the problem. They won't. We don't even recognize ourselves. Tomoko pushed her tray away still full. She'd stopped eating 3 days ago, not from protest, from anxiety so severe it killed her appetite. My mother wrote last week, said the neighbors are calling me a traitor. They know I was captured. They know I survived. They think I collaborated. Did you? Sakura's voice was sharp. The Okinawa woman still carried rage like armor. Yes, Tomoko said quietly. I worked in the medical barracks. I learned English. I ate American food and said thank you. I collaborated with my own survival. Is that a crime? Nobody answered because they'd all done the same. Murphy gathered them in the mess hall on June 1st. His face looked older than 9 months ago. This assignment had aged everyone. You'll ship out from San Francisco docks on the 15th. The Red Cross has arranged everything. You'll have supplies, medical support, and letters of transit. When you arrive in Japan, occupation forces will help you find your families. You're not being abandoned. The translator finished. Silence. Then Reiko, the youngest, raised her hand. Colonel Murphy, can we stay? The question hung like smoke. Murphy's expression softened. No, Miss Matsuda. You need to go home. Your families need you. Japan needs you. You've learned something here. About peace. About dignity. Take that knowledge home. Build something better. They'll hate us for what we learned. Some will, but not all. Change starts with one person, then 2, then 10. You can be those people. After the meeting, Ko found Murphy in his office. She knocked. He looked up surprised. Miss Fujimoto, what can I do for you? Ko's English had improved dramatically. I want to say thank you, for medicine, for brother, for treating us like human beings. Murphy walked around his desk. You don't need to thank me. We just did what was right. But you didn't have to. That is what makes it matter. Ko's eyes filled. In Japan, we were taught that strength means crushing enemies. You taught us that real strength means helping them stand up. I will remember this. Always. Murphy shook her hand, firm, respectful. Go home, Miss Fujimoto. Become a great nurse. Teach others what you learned. That's the best thank you you can give me. The final days were chaos. Women packing meager belongings. Americans distributing care packages, Red Cross boxes with food, medical supplies, clothing. Helen gave Ko her stethoscope. "I can get another one. You'll need this more than me." Ko couldn't speak, just hugged her. Helen hugged back, crying into Ko's shoulder. "I'm going to miss you. You were the best student I ever had. You saved my life, not from death, from hate. That is bigger gift." They pulled apart. Helen wiped her eyes. "Write to me, San Francisco General Hospital. I'll be back there next month." "I will write, I promise." Yuki found Lieutenant Porter in the translation office organizing files. He looked up when she entered. "Yuki, hi. I was hoping I'd see you before you left." She handed him a paper crane. Origami. She'd been folding them for weeks. Japanese tradition. For peace. For friendship. Porter held it like treasure. "Thank you. I'll keep it forever." He reached into his desk. "I have something for you too." A photograph. The cherry blossom picture from April. But he'd written on the back, "To Yuki. Proof that enemies can become friends. Jim Porter, April 1946. Yuki clutched it. "I will show my family. Show them Americans are not demons. And I'll show my family that Japanese are not monsters. Maybe between us we can change a few minds." They shook hands. Then impulsively Yuki hugged him. Porter froze, then hugged back. When they separated, both were crying. June 15th arrived with fog. San Francisco fog that felt like goodbye. The women boarded trucks at dawn. Murphy and his staff lined up to see them off. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet respect. As Ko climbed into the truck, she looked back at Angel Island. 9 months ago, she'd arrived expecting death. Now she was leaving with life, with hope, with the terrible knowledge that everything she'd believed was wrong. The island disappeared into fog. She never saw it again. The docks were organized chaos. USS General M.C. Meigs waited a transport ship that would carry them across the Pacific. Other repatriation groups were boarding. Soldiers returning home. Civilians being relocated. Everyone going somewhere. No one certain what they'd find. On deck, the women clustered together. Yuki found Ko at the railing watching San Francisco recede. Scared. Terrified. "You?" "Same." "Ko, what if we can't adjust? What if Japan feels foreign now? Then we adjust anyway. We survived war. We can survive peace." The voyage took 12 days. 12 days of rolling seas and mounting anxiety. Women who'd learned to live in America now had to unlearn it. Tomoko practiced bowing. Reiko practiced formal Japanese she'd almost forgotten. Sakura sat alone staring at the ocean, preparing for a homecoming she dreaded. Ko spent the voyage reading Helen's nursing textbook, memorizing procedures, planning. If she couldn't change the past, she'd change the future. She'd open a clinic, teach modern medicine, treat patients with dignity. Be the change Murphy said they could be. On the 8th day, an older woman named Hana Yoshida approached Ko. 53, had been a school administrator in Manila. She'd been quiet the entire captivity. Now she spoke. "Miss Fujimoto, do you believe in God?" Ko looked up surprised. "I don't know." "Why?" "Because I've been trying to understand. We were taught Americans were devils, but they treated us like angels would. So either God works in mysterious ways, or everything we were taught about good and evil is backwards." Ko closed her book. Maybe good and evil aren't about nationality. Maybe they're about choices. Americans chose kindness. Our government chose lies, that's all. But it's not that simple. Some Americans dropped the atomic bombs, killed hundreds of thousands, same people who fed us and gave us medicine. How do we reconcile that? We don't. We just accept that humans are complicated, capable of both cruelty and compassion, sometimes simultaneously. Hana nodded slowly. "When we get home, I'm going to teach. Teach children that the world isn't divided into us and them, that former enemies can become friends, that peace is always possible if we choose it. They might fire you for saying that. Let them. Some truths are worth losing your job over. June 27, 1946. Land appeared on the horizon. Japan. Home. The women crowded the railing silent. Tokyo Bay stretched before them gray and cold. Ko could see the city from the ship. Or what was left of it. Vast areas of rubble. Buildings reduced to skeletons, but also signs of rebuilding. Cranes. Construction. Life continuing. It's really gone, Yuki whispered. Everything. Tomoko's voice was hollow. What did we expect? We knew the Americans had bombed it. We just didn't want to see. The ship docked at Yokohama at 1400 hours. American military police controlled the docks. Organized, efficient, surprisingly gentle. They directed the women to processing tents where Red Cross workers waited with hot tea and rice balls. Real rice balls. Japanese food prepared by Japanese workers under American supervision. Ko accepted the food. Bit into it. The taste was home and heartbreak combined. She was back in Japan, but Japan wasn't the same. Neither was she. A Red Cross worker checked her papers. Fujimoto Ko from Tokyo Shibuya District. Yes. We have transport arranged. There's a medical center there now. Your family was notified of your arrival. Ko's heart stopped. My family. They're alive. According to our records, yes. Mother, one brother. Your brother was treated for tuberculosis at the district clinic. Ko's legs went weak. Takeshi was alive, really alive. The medicine had worked. The Americans had saved him. The truck ride to Tokyo took 3 hours through devastated landscape. Entire neighborhoods gone, rivers of rubble. But everywhere people worked, rebuilding, surviving, and everywhere American soldiers. Not occupying, helping, distributing food, directing traffic, building infrastructure. Yuki, sitting beside Ko, stared out the window. Porter was right. They're not conquerors. I don't know what they are. Liberators, Sakura said bitterly. Liberating us from our own government's failures. The Shibuya District Medical Center was new. Clean. American-built with Japanese staff. A nurse directed Ko to a waiting area. Your family will be here soon. Ko sat, waited. Every minute felt like an hour. Then the door opened and her mother walked in. Ko barely recognized her. Thin, gray-haired, aged a decade and 2 years, but alive. Her mother's eyes widened. Ko? Ko stood, bowed deeply. Traditional. Formal. Mother, I have returned. Her mother rushed forward, hugged her. Really hugged her, breaking all protocol. You're alive. You're healthy. Oh, Ko, you're so healthy. The accusation in those last words cut deep. Ko pulled back. Mother, Don't apologize. Don't you dare apologize for surviving. Her mother's voice broke. I prayed every night that at least one of my children would live. And you did. That's all that matters. Takeshi. Outside. He's shy, embarrassed about being sick. Ko went to the door, found her brother standing in the hall, 15 years old now, thin but upright, breathing clearly, alive. Takeshi. He bowed, formal, distant. Sister. Welcome home. The formality hurt worse than any insult. Ko approached slowly. Are you well? Yes. The American medicine worked. The American doctors were very kind. His voice was flat, empty. They saved my life while you were a prisoner eating American food. Everyone says you're a collaborator. Ko's mother gasped. Takeshi. But Ko held up her hand. He's right. I was a prisoner. I did eat American food. I worked with American nurses. I learned American medicine. And yes, I asked them to send you medicine. I collaborated with keeping you alive. If that makes me a traitor, then I'm a traitor." Takeshi's facade cracked. "I don't want you to be a traitor. I want you to be my sister." "I am your sister. But I'm also someone who learned that enemies can be kind, that mercy matters more than pride, that survival isn't shameful." Ko knelt to his level. "Takeshi, the Americans treated me better than our own army did. They fed me, clothed me, let me work as a nurse with dignity. And when I asked them to save you, they did. No questions, no conditions, just helped, because that's who they are." Takeshi's eyes filled. "But we're supposed to hate them. Why the war is over? Hate doesn't rebuild cities, doesn't cure disease, doesn't bring back the dead. All hate does is keep us trapped in the past. Is that what you want?" Her brother shook his head, fell into her arms, sobbed like the child he still was. Ko held him crying too while her mother wept nearby. 3 survivors in a medical center built by former enemies, learning to live in a world where old certainties no longer applied. Over the next week, Ko visited old friends, former colleagues. The reactions varied. Some welcomed her warmly. Others turned away, calling her a traitor. She expected this. Murphy had warned her. But something else surprised her. Everywhere she went, she saw American influence. Not occupation. Reconstruction. Schools being rebuilt with American funds. Food distribution centers run by American military. Medical clinics staffed by American doctors, training Japanese nurses in modern techniques. The Americans were doing in Japan exactly what they'd done at Angel Island. Treating enemies with dignity. Rebuilding with purpose. Demonstrating that mercy wasn't weakness, but policy. Ko visited her old hospital. Osaka University Hospital had been partially destroyed but was being rebuilt. The director, Dr. Yamamoto, elderly and worn, greeted her in his makeshift office. "Fujimoto-san, I heard you'd returned, and that you bring American training." "Yes, sir. I worked with American nurses and doctors for 9 months. I learned new techniques, modern approaches." Yamamoto gestured for her to sit. "Tell me honestly, were you treated well?" Ko chose her words carefully. "I was treated like a human being, fed properly, housed safely, allowed to work as a nurse with full respect. They never harmed me, never humiliated me. They just helped." Yamamoto was quiet for a long moment. "I've been working with American medical corps here. Same experience. They're teaching us penicillin protocols, modern surgical techniques, public health strategies. Fujimoto-san, they're not punishing us for losing. They're helping us rebuild better than we were before. Do you understand why? Because they learned from the last war. After the First World War, the victors crushed Germany. And that created the Second World War. This time they're rebuilding us, so we become partners, not enemies. It's brilliant strategy, and it's also genuinely kind. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive." Ko felt something loosen in her chest. Validation. From someone she respected. "Dr. Yamamoto, I want to teach. Teach what I learned. Not just medical techniques, but philosophy. Treating patients with dignity. Believing that everyone deserves care, regardless of who they are. Then teach. We need people like you. People who've seen both sides and understand that there doesn't have to be sides anymore." Ko left his office with purpose. She would teach, would open a clinic, would be the change Murphy said they could be. Not because Americans told her to, because it was right. Yuki found work as a translator for the occupation forces. Her English was fluent now. She helped American soldiers communicate with Japanese civilians, bridging the gap between former enemies. Some called her a traitor. She called herself a bridge. Tomoko became a nurse at the American Military Hospital in Tokyo, worked alongside Helen's colleagues, learned constantly, grew daily. Her neighbors stopped speaking to her. She didn't care. She was saving lives. That mattered more than gossip. Sakura returned to Okinawa. found her school destroyed, started teaching in a tent. American soldiers helped her build a real classroom. She taught her students that Americans weren't demons. Some parents pulled their children out. Most stayed. Slowly minds changed. Reiko, the youngest, struggled most. Couldn't reconcile what she'd learned with what her family wanted her to believe. She wrote to Ko, "They want me to pretend it didn't happen. Pretend the Americans didn't treat us well. Pretend I didn't learn to see them as human. But I can't unknow what I know. How do I live with this truth?" Ko wrote back, "You live with it by being honest, by teaching others, by refusing to let propaganda win even in peacetime. You survived for a reason. Make that survival mean something." 1 year after return, Ko opened her clinic in Shibuya, small, modest, but run on principles she'd learned from Helen and Weinstein. Every patient treated with dignity. Every life valued equally. Modern medicine with compassionate philosophy. On opening day, her mother asked, "What will you call it?" Ko thought about Angel Island, about Murphy and Helen and Sullivan and all the Americans who'd chosen kindness over cruelty, about the impossible lesson that enemies could become teachers. "Angel Clinic," she said, "to remember that mercy came when we expected monsters." Her mother smiled. Understood. Good name. Good memory. That night, Ko wrote to Helen. The letter took 3 months to arrive. Helen's response came 4 months later. They maintained correspondence for decades. 2 nurses. 2 friends. 2 women who'd learned that the distance between enemy and ally was just a choice. Just a moment. Just a willingness to see humanity across the divide. Japan rose from ashes. Not because of conquest, because of reconstruction. Because America chose to rebuild rather than destroy. Chose partnership over domination. Chose long-term peace over short-term revenge. And in that choosing, they won something bigger than the war. They won the future. They proved that mercy wasn't weakness, but the ultimate strength. That treating enemies with dignity transformed them into allies. That kindness, deployed strategically and genuinely, changed the world. Ko understood this now. Understood that her 9 months at Angel Island weren't captivity. They were education. Education in what peace could look like if both sides chose it. Education that she spent the rest of her life teaching others. Because freedom had come. Not when the war ended. But when she learned that the enemy wasn't who she'd been taught to fear. Freedom came when mercy arrived instead of monsters. And that freedom, that knowledge, that impossible truth she carried forward. Always. Forever. A bridge between worlds, built on the foundation of unexpected kindness. 20 years passed like water through fingers. Ko stood in her clinic on a rainy afternoon in 1966, watching a young mother hold her newborn. The baby was healthy pink, perfect. Ko had delivered hundreds like her, but each one still felt like a small miracle. Like proof that life continued despite everything. "Thank you, Dr. Fujimoto," the mother said, using the title Ko had earned through correspondence courses and sheer determination. "You saved us both." Ko smiled. "You did the hard work. I just helped." After the mother left, Ko sat at her desk and pulled out an old photograph. Yellowed, creased from being unfolded too many times. 50 women under cherry blossoms at Angel Island. April 1946. Yuki stood on Ko's left, Tomoko on her right. All of them caught between worlds, between identities frozen in that impossible moment when enemies had become something else entirely. 20 years. Helen's letters came regularly, though less frequently now. Her own clinic in San Francisco thrived. She'd married, had 3 children, never stopped teaching. Her last letter mentioned that Angel Island was being decommissioned. The barracks where they'd lived, where Ko had learned that mercy could destroy hatred, would soon be empty. Forgotten. Ko wrote back immediately. "Please don't let them forget. What happened there matters. Not because we suffered, because we learned. Because 247 women discovered that everything they believed was a lie and that truth changed us forever. That story has to survive." Helen's response came 3 months later. I'm trying. I've spoken to historians, to the military, to anyone who'll listen. But Ko people don't want complicated stories. They want heroes and villains. They don't want to hear that we fed enemy prisoners chicken dinners and treated them like human beings. It doesn't fit the narrative. Ko understood. Japan had its own narrative problems. The official story was occupation reconstruction, American help. But the emotional reality, the psychological transformation, the cognitive dissonance of being conquered by kindness, that story made people uncomfortable. So it was quietly buried under bureaucracy and selective memory. But Ko wouldn't let it die. Every new nurse she trained heard the story. Every patient who asked about her stethoscope, Helen's stethoscope, heard the story. Every student who wondered why Dr. Fujimoto treated everyone equally regardless of class or status, heard the story. I learned from Americans, she would say simply. They taught me that every life has equal value, that dignity isn't earned, it's inherent, that mercy is strength, not weakness. Some people understood, many didn't. Ko stopped caring about the proportion. In 1968, Yuki came to visit. She was 47 now, married to a Japanese businessman, 2 children, a comfortable life. But her eyes still held that fractured quality, like someone who'd seen 2 contradictory truths and couldn't unsee either. They sat in Ko's small office drinking tea, talking about nothing important, until Yuki finally said what she'd come to say. My daughter asked me yesterday why I speak English so well, why I have American books, why I cry when I hear Glenn Miller music. Ko waited. I told her about Angel Island, about being a prisoner, about the Americans who smiled instead of shooting us, about Lieutenant Porter and his chocolate and his stupid Valentine's card that I still have in a box under my bed. Yuki's voice cracked. She didn't believe me. She said I was making it up, that Americans weren't kind to prisoners, that propaganda from both sides exaggerated everything. What did you say? I showed her the photograph, the cherry blossom one, and I told her that the hardest thing I've ever done wasn't surviving the war. It was surviving the peace, surviving the knowledge that I'd been lied to, that my brother died believing lies, that millions died for nothing. Yuki wiped her eyes. Ko, our children don't understand. They can't. They didn't live it. Then we write it down. We document it. We make sure the truth survives even if understanding doesn't. Yuki nodded slowly. Porter wrote to me last year. First time in almost 20 years. He's a high school history teacher now in Pennsylvania, teaching about the war. He asked if I'd be willing to share my story with his students, letters maybe, or recorded testimony. Are you going to do it? I don't know. It feels like betrayal, telling Americans that they were kind to us, like I'm somehow validating what they did. The bombs, the occupation, all of it. Ko set down her teacup. Yuki, you can hold 2 truths at once. Americans dropped atomic bombs that killed hundreds of thousands. Also, true Americans treated us as prisoners with dignity and respect. Both things happened. Both things are real. We don't have to choose which truth to tell. We can tell both. But people want simple stories. Then we give them complex truth and let them struggle with it. The struggle is important. That's where growth happens. In 1970, Tomoko's daughter enrolled in nursing school. Ko interviewed her personally, saw the same determination in her eyes that Tomoko had carried all those years ago. My mother says you were prisoners together, the girl said. In America, during the war. That's right. She says the Americans were kind to you. Is that true? Or is she remembering it wrong? Ko studied the young woman. 20 years old, born in 1950. No memory of war, only the prosperity that came after. She'd grown up in a Japan rebuilt by American money, defended by American military, influenced by American culture. And yet, she didn't understand the complexity of that relationship. Your mother remembers perfectly. The Americans fed us, clothed us, treated us with respect. They gave us medical care, paid us for our work. And when my brother was dying of tuberculosis in Tokyo, an American doctor helped send him medicine. All of that is true. But they were the enemy. Yes, they were the enemy. And they acted more humanely than our own government did. Both things are true. Can you accept that? The girl was silent for a long moment. I don't know if I can. Then you're honest. That's a good start. Come back when you've thought about it. She came back 3 days later. I want to learn, not just nursing, but whatever you learned that made you different from other nurses. My mother says you treat patients like they matter, really matter, not just as cases or statistics. I want to learn that. Ko accepted her into the program, taught her everything Helen had taught her, watched as another generation learned that dignity could cross enemy lines, that mercy could be policy, that kindness could be revolutionary. In 1975, Murphy died. Helen's letter delivered the news with grief Ko could feel through the paper. Heart attack. Quick. He was 73. At his funeral, they mentioned his Pacific service, but nothing about Angel Island. Nothing about the 247 women he treated with dignity when he could have treated with cruelty. Ko. I tried to tell the story. They didn't want to hear it. Said it was too complicated, too ambiguous. People want heroes who are purely heroic, not complicated men who did one extraordinarily decent thing. Ko wrote back through tears. Then we remember him ourselves. We tell our children. We make sure his decency isn't forgotten just because it's inconvenient. That night, Ko pulled out her journal. She'd been writing in it for 29 years, documenting everything. The fear on the gangplank, the first hot shower, the chicken dinner that made her cry, Helen's kindness, Weinstein's help with her brother, Murphy's steady decency, Sullivan's shy smile. Every detail preserved because she knew even then that this story would be inconvenient, would be buried, would need resurrection. She wrote, Colonel James Murphy died today, the man who chose mercy over vengeance, who demonstrated that America's greatest weapon wasn't the atomic bomb, but the idea that even enemies deserve dignity. He will be forgotten by history. So I write this to remember. Because memory is resistance. Because letting good people vanish into silence is how evil wins. In 1980, Ko received an invitation. The Japanese American Citizens League was hosting a conference on the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. They wanted Ko to speak, to provide perspective from the other side. She almost declined. Speaking publicly about Angel Island meant exposing herself to judgment, to accusations of collaboration, to the complexity she'd been managing privately for 34 years. But Yuki convinced her. If we don't tell the story, who will? Everyone who was there is dying. Murphy's gone. How many of the 247 are left? Maybe half, maybe less. Ko, we're running out of time. The truth is dying with us. So Ko went to San Francisco. Stood on American soil for the first time since 1946. The city had changed. Bigger, cleaner, more prosperous. The Golden Gate Bridge still spanned the bay, still red, still magnificent. She spoke to 200 people in a hotel conference room. Told the truth. All of it. The fear, the propaganda, the expectation of torture, the shock of kindness, the cognitive dissonance, the psychological destruction of having every belief shattered by mercy. They conquered us with bombs, Ko said in careful English. But they defeated us with kindness. They destroyed our certainty. They forced us to see them as human. And that was the real victory, because you can rebuild after bombs, but you can't unlearn that your enemy is human. That knowledge changes everything. After her speech, a young Japanese-American woman approached, third generation. Her grandparents had been interned at Manzanar. My grandmother was also a prisoner, the woman said. But in California, in a camp for Japanese Americans. And she says they were treated terribly, stripped of rights, property, dignity. How can both stories be true? How can America imprison its own citizens cruelly while treating enemy prisoners kindly? Ko had no good answer. I don't know. Humans are contradictory. Nations are contradictory. Maybe the same country can commit injustice and mercy simultaneously. Maybe that's the uncomfortable truth we have to hold. The woman's eyes filled. I want to hate them for what they did to my grandmother, but your story makes it complicated. Good, Ko said gently. Complicated is honest. Comfortable stories are usually lies. That night, Ko stood on the dock at Fort Mason. The same dock where she'd stepped off USS Consolation 34 years ago, terrified and certain she was about to die. Now she stood here as a respected doctor, a teacher, a survivor who'd built a life from the ashes of certainty. Helen found her there. They'd arranged to meet. Hadn't seen each other in person since 1946. Helen was 63 now, gray-haired, but still carrying that nurse efficiency, that calm competence Ko remembered. They looked at each other across 3 decades. Then fell into each other's arms, crying like the young women they'd once been. You came, Helen said. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. But Yuki said someone has to tell the truth. They walked to Helen's car, talking like the years had never happened. Helen drove them to Angel Island. The ferry still ran through less frequently now. The buildings were mostly abandoned, scheduled for demolition. They walked through the barracks where Ko had slept, where she'd cried over her mother's letters, where she'd argued with Michiko about loyalty and truth. The bunks were gone, the heaters removed, just empty rooms full of ghosts. I tried to get it preserved, Helen said. Historical landmark status. But nobody cared. It's just an immigration station. They don't want to remember it held Japanese prisoners. Doesn't fit the narrative. Ko touched the wall, felt the wood under her palm. This place saved my life. It saved all of you. No, I mean really saved me. Not just from death, from hate, from the poison of believing lies. This place taught me that enemies are just people on the wrong side of politics, that mercy is possible, that peace is a choice. Ko turned to Helen. How do we make sure this isn't forgotten? Helen pulled out a camera. We document it, photograph everything, record testimonies, collect the letters we wrote, build an archive, and then we trust that someday someone will care enough to listen. They spent the day photographing. Every barracks, every view of the bay, every corner where transformation had happened. Ko stood in the spot where she'd first showered with hot water, where she'd first eaten chicken dinner, where she'd first realized that everything she believed was wrong. Take my picture here, she told Helen. I want proof I came back, proof I survived, proof I didn't forget. Helen took the picture. Ko standing in an empty room, older but unbroken, carrying the weight of truth that most people didn't want to hear. That evening they sat in Helen's living room. Her husband Tom had cooked dinner. Their grown children joined them. Helen had told them about Ko, about Angel Island, about the impossible story of enemies becoming friends. Helen's oldest daughter, Anne, asked the question everyone always asked. How did you forgive them after everything Japan did? Pearl Harbor? The atrocities. How did you look at Japanese prisoners and see people? Helen's answer was simple. Because they were people, that's all. Just people who'd been told lies by their governments, same as us. And I decided that someone had to break the cycle of hatred. Why not me? Ko added quietly. And I decided that if Americans could show mercy to enemies, I could show mercy to myself. For surviving. For living while others died. For learning. For changing. Mercy has to start somewhere. Why not with us? In 1985, 40 years after the war's end, Ko wrote her memoir. Not for publication, just for her family. For her children and grandchildren. So they would know the truth. Know that their grandmother had been conquered by kindness. That she'd learned the hardest lesson, that the distance between enemy and friend is just a choice. She wrote, I was taught that Americans were demons. They fed me chicken and gave me warm blankets. I was taught that surrender was worse than death, but surviving taught me more than dying ever could. I was taught that loyalty meant blind obedience. But real loyalty means telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. She dedicated the book to Murphy, to Helen, to Sullivan, to Weinstein, to every American who'd chosen decency over cruelty, and to the 247 women who'd survived not just the war, but the more difficult task of surviving peace. Ko died in 1991 at age 69. Cancer. Quick, surrounded by family. Her last words were to her granddaughter, who'd become a nurse following the family tradition. Remember Angel Island. Remember that mercy is revolutionary. Remember that the greatest strength is choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. Remember that enemies are just people who haven't been shown another way. Remember. Please remember. Her granddaughter kept that promise. Published Ko's memoir in 1995. The book sold modestly, but found its audience. People who understood that history isn't simple, that former enemies built the modern world together, that peace required uncomfortable truths. Helen lived until 2003, 88 years old. At her funeral, Ko's daughter attended. Brought the stethoscope Helen had given Ko in 1946. Placed it in Helen's casket. Two nurses, two friends, reunited even in death. The Angel Island barracks were finally designated a historical site in 2000. Not for the Japanese prisoners, for the Chinese immigrants who'd been processed there decades earlier. But the prisoner's story was preserved too in small plaques, in archived photographs, in recorded testimonies. Today, you can visit Angel Island, walk through the barracks, read the stories, see photographs of women under cherry blossoms caught between worlds learning impossible truths. The tour guides tell sanitized versions. War prisoners, good treatment. Geneva Convention. They don't talk about the psychological transformation, the destruction of certainty, the revolutionary act of mercy. But the truth survives in Ko's memoir, in Helen's letters, in Yuki's recorded testimony, in the children and grandchildren who carry the story forward, in every nurse who learns to treat patients with dignity because Ko taught them that dignity crosses enemy lines. The story survives because memory is resistance. Because letting uncomfortable truths disappear is how we repeat history's worst mistakes. Because 247 women learned something profound at Angel Island, and that knowledge changed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone they touched afterward. They expected monsters and found men who smiled. They expected torture and found mercy. They expected to die and learned to live. And in that learning, they became bridges between worlds, proof that enemies can become friends, that hatred can transform into understanding, that peace is always possible if we choose it. This is their story. This is Ko's story. Helen's story. The story of every woman who walked off USS Consolation expecting death and walked back on USS General MC Meigs carrying life. The story of every soldier who chose kindness over cruelty. Every doctor who healed enemies. Every person who looked across the divide and saw not a demon, but a human being. If you believe their names deserve to be remembered, share this story. Write a name in the comments. Ko Fujimoto, Helen Crawford, Yuki Tanaka, James Murphy. Every person who chose mercy when hatred would have been easier. Every person who proved that peace isn't weakness, but the ultimate strength. Every person who demonstrated that the distance between enemy and friend is just one choice, one moment, one willingness to see humanity where we've been taught to see monsters. Remember them, because they remembered us, because they chose to build bridges instead of walls, because they proved that kindness deployed genuinely and consistently changes the world, and because forgetting them means losing the lesson they died, teaching that mercy defeats hatred, that dignity transforms enemies, that peace is always possible if we simply choose it. They built Angel Island with fear, but it's remembered with love. And that transformation from terror to hope, from enemy to friend, from hatred to understanding, that's the real victory. That's the story that must survive. That's the truth worth preserving against every comfortable lie that tries to bury it. Remember. Please remember. Because memory is how the dead continue teaching the living. And these dead have lessons we desperately need to learn.